So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview, recorded live on blogtalkradio.com from the new media and American League Baseball capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. Miles O'Brien was a great guy with whom to start your day. Flip on CNN at breakfast, and for years there he was, a calm and reassuring presence on the news channel's American Mornings program. He'll probably tell me that he's never slipped on a word. Alongside Soledad O'Brien, giving the headlines, keeping us centered and calm, no matter how bad the overnight reports might be. Then, one day, he was gone. Oh, the new duo in the morning, they're fine, they're professional, but more than a few of us miss Miles. But after 17 years with CNN, he's moved on. In fact, he's constantly moving now. Today, he's in Lakeland, Florida, or somewhere between Lakeland and Tampa. That's right, nearby the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida, the headquarters of the Mr. Media Empire. And that's where he premiered a new movie, Over Africa. Tomorrow, who knows where he'll be. O'Brien is pursuing all of his interests at once in an incredible whirl of activity. If you miss his daily impact upon your day, you can add him as a friend on Facebook. You can follow him on Twitter, or you can subscribe to his blog, which is simply milesobrien.wordpress.com. Miles, welcome to Mr. Media.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Bob, and I never, ever did lip on my words, ever.
I knew you'd say that. Hey, it's great to have you here. I know that you are a man constantly on the move these days. But I have to ask you, I want to start with this. CNN's Sanjay Gupta almost became the nation's Surgeon General. And now the president is on the phone and he's calling you. The U.S. space program, dangerously adrift, inspiring no one. Barack Obama wants to know your vision for it. What do you tell him?
My vision for the space program is spend a little more money on it. That's pretty much how it all boils down to. But if I got that call, it'd be very difficult to pull that deal off financially for me. But I've got 2 kids in private schools in Manhattan, so there you have that. But then again, NASA needs a shot in the arm, doesn't it? And it's leaderless right now. It needs a leader terribly. And, really it's very straightforward. No bucks, no Buck Rogers. And you can talk all you want all day long about all the cool things you want to do, but if you don't fund the programs, there'll be a big, long, fat gap where we are unable to get to space by ourselves. It's going to be at least 5 years, but that's 5 years assuming the money comes, and the money hasn't been coming. And I admit, these are tough times, and I know there's all kinds of needs and desires and wants. But let me ask you this. Why is it that in India, where the per capita income is about $800 a year, why is it in India they can afford to have a space program and desire to put their people in space in their own vehicles? If Calcutta can do it, certainly Cleveland can do it. So I think Americans need to wake up and smell the coffee and say something about this space programming having value, inspiring children, making them study math and science, and ultimately keeping us competitive. The Chinese are eating on lunch. They spend a lot of money on space. They want to go back to the moon. They are focused. They don't have a messy democracy to deal with, of course. But our democracy should make a statement about this and say this is important to us. We want to be a leader in all this.
Well, maybe Calcutta and China aren't the best examples. I mean, they're much more crowded than Cleveland. Of course they're looking for places to put people.
The space is the answer, indeed.
So the program needs money, but let's say the program is funded. What should the program be doing? Is a space glider the answer? Do we need a further vision of what to do, and do we need a shorter time span to get it done in? I think the last President Bush talked about putting a man on Mars in 15, 20 years. Who can think that far ahead?
Well, it's difficult when the politician is thinking in a 2-year cycle, of course, and that's the fundamental disconnect between the political process and the long, difficult engineering process of going to do something like that, like sending people to Mars. Here's what I think. I think, just in my experience covering space, space station shuttle, frankly, never really resonated with people. Sadly, the only time people paid attention to those programs was when we lost people. It's horrible. But the fact is, the space station is a wonderful engineering marvel. Engineering marvels don't really thrill kids. Going to Mars thrills kids and thrills adults, for that matter. And those little rovers that are still going 5 years later on the surface of Mars, Spirit and Opportunity, the amount of interest in them and any of those missions that take us to another world is very hard to measure. It's tremendous. And I think if you're exploring, if you're showing people new worlds, and if you're taking people to new worlds, you are going to capture people's imagination in a way that circling around the planet at 17,500 miles an hour would never do. So it's about a destination. And having human beings go to Mars is something that would inspire people on several levels. And it says a lot about human beings and a lot about our future and a lot about what is important to us. And it also says a lot about us as a nation and our view, our world view, put it that way, and whether we want to stay on the top of the heap.
I thought, I brought this up to you because I think if we look back over the almost 50 years of American spaceflight, we're getting close to that point next year, I guess. It's always been TV journalists who have really inspired the nation. I mean, the government and NASA have created the vehicles, but it's been Walter Cronkite, it's been I'm going to get his name wrong, Jay Barbary, I think.
Sure, Jay Barbary, yeah.
Right? I mean, guys like that who have yourself with your keen interest in all this. I mean, so maybe the leader-in-chief for NASA in the future should be someone from your ranks, don't you think?
Well, I listen, if you're going to start a recruiting campaign, I'm all ears. I remember Jules Bergman, too. He was another one of my favorites.
Jules Bergman, of course.
The thing, I just like to put him in there because I thought he was a real reporter's reporter. But I think the nature of this story lends itself well to television for obvious reasons. We don't have to go down that road. It's immediate, it's spectacular, it's all perfect, made-for-TV stuff. And I guess that it stands to reason that the TV reporters who have been closest to the program would be, most identified with it. And I think... a lot of people say, well, you're just a booster, you're a cheerleader for space and so forth. And a lot of times these are people who cover politics. And I'll say to them, well, hey, wait a minute, do you love politics? And they'll say, sure. Okay, do you cover politics? Yes. Okay. I love space and I cover space. I come to it as somebody who embraces it. You wouldn't put somebody on the political beat who hates politics, right? So the point is, when you're covering space, you're there to tell it like it is. Tell the people when NASA or their taxpaying money is not being spent wisely, but then also to enjoy the excitement when it succeeds. Because if you think about it, there are very few moments that we share together collectively that are uplifting moments in the news world. Mostly what you think of is, I remember where I was when Columbia or Challenger or JFK got shot, or 9/11, on it goes, negative things. But there's also, I remember, if you were alive, that moment when Neil Armstrong put footprints on the moon, or I remember when Opportunity and Spirit landed and sent those first pictures back. Those are uplifting moments that bind us together. We don't have many of those, and that's why it's fun to cover that beat.
Were you disappointed that Sanjay Gupta decided to pass? Apparently, for the same reason that you cited right off the top, that it doesn't pay enough.
Well, there's the pay issue, there's the scrutiny issue, there's the sacrifice to the family. He's got young children. I've got kids too. It's a grind, and frankly, I've had some conversations with NASA about working with them in the public affairs realm. And, it's a very, very big sacrifice that you have to make on several levels. And it worries me because I know in my personal experience, if that's what happens on the micro level, there's a lot of good people who are not in our government who should be and could be if this system was a little less difficult on individuals, on families, if it paid a little more, frankly. I think our government, which we like to bemoan, would be a lot more effective. Frankly, to get top people, you have to pay them a reasonable amount of money. And a lot of people are going to say, well, $150,000, that sounds like a lot of money. Well, it's a family of four in Washington D.C. on $150,000. Is not it's not an easy thing to pull off, frankly.
Mm. I have plenty of questions for you myself, but folks, if you're listening to us live and you've got a comment or question for journalist Miles O'Brien, formerly of CNN, give us a call, 646-595-3135. You can also learn more about Miles and what he's up to by following him on Twitter or Facebook, or at his blog, milesobrien.wordpress.com. So, a couple of years ago, Lou Dobbs left CNN, and frankly, I wish he had stayed away, but that's beside the point. He started Spacecom, try to make some money off of his love of space. How are you making your passion for space pay off in these post-CNN days?
Well, I'm not sure about the payoff yet, Bob, but yeah. I do know this. Actually, I do know this. And this is true for space, and it's true for a lot of other subjects that I happen to be associated with. Let's face it, what I'm interested in appeals to a niche. Obviously, it's too small a niche for CNN, or there'd still be a science and technology unit there, right? So, okay, those people that were still fans of what we did are out there somewhere. How do you reach them? Well, I don't need CNN anymore. I don't need cable systems. I don't need a satellite truck. All I need is a laptop and a DV camera and a connection to the internet and Ustream, and I'm a television network all by myself. Miles O'Brien News Network, right? Mob NN. And so what happened was, first shuttle mission comes up post-CNN. I didn't want to miss it. So I called my friends at spaceflightnow.com. Stephen Young, who runs that operation, has been down at the Cape for years, has a fantastic website, has video on there. He does real-time blogging during the missions, so you can stay abreast of the missions if you're not necessarily listening to all the comm loops all the time. I said, why don't we stream out a launch? And he said, well, that's great, but can you get some sponsorship? I called up some the key players. I called Boeing, the United Space Alliance, Lockheed Martin, the Coalition for Space Exploration, ATK, the rocket builders, all the big players. Every one of them was enthusiastic and ponied up a lot of money. And all of a sudden, we had a network. We had a program, and we did 5 solid hours of live streaming during the launch on Ustream. We kept crashing the system. It was so popular, unfortunately. We've got to work on that. But we had many tens of thousands of people. It was a global audience. It was a two-way communication, a conversation, because they have the chat component in Ustream. I was Twittering while I was doing the whole thing. And as it was absolutely, it gives me goosebumps when I think about it, because for the first time, it was, instead of me broadcasting, I was having a 5-hour enlightening, interesting, engaging conversation with the world about space set against the backdrop of a shuttle launch. It was fantastic. And it was profitable. So that tells me a few things. I'm kind of slow this way, but I think that might be the future. And, the playing field has been leveled in ways we could not have imagined even a few years ago. And so whether it's this, or whether it's coverage, I'm at the Sun and Fun Air Show right now, whether it's coverage relating to aviation and what pilots are interested in, there are any number of niche plays out there that with a small, lean staff, myself and just a few people to prop up cameras and so forth, you can deliver content to that audience. That audience will find you, and what's even more interesting, you're going to be, the audience, of course, you're presumed to be preaching to the choir, but with the power of social networking and Twittering and all the things that go on, they bring in a larger group and tell their friends of friends. And all of a sudden, the snowball really starts rolling down the hill, and what you've discovered is an entirely new model for communicating with people, sharing information, sharing passion.
And you mentioned you're at the Sun and Fun Festival, which I'll remind people is in Lakeland, Florida. You're there. You premiered a movie over Africa. What is your involvement in that, and what is the movie about?
Well, I'm on the board of the Charles A. and Ann Murrow Lindbergh Foundation, which was obviously established by the Lindbergh family, and it is a foundation, a small foundation, that is committed to finding technological and scientific answers to environmental problems. And we fund all kinds of small scientific projects that would help, solve some big problems in the world, like, novel, cheap, yet clever ways to provide decent drinking water for the billions of people on this planet who can't even get a glass of water that is safe to drink. Here I am celebrating aviation in Lakeland, and there are people on this planet who can't get a good drink of water. I mean, that disparity just makes me crazy. And so we fund projects like that. And one of the things that we funded this year was an effort by the air show performer Patty Wagstaff, who's famous in air show circles, to go over and teach the pilots of the Kenya Wildlife Service, the game wardens, to fly their little planes safely over the national parks of Kenya. They fly very small, tail dragger airplanes. There are a dozen of them in all, and they fly over these huge game parks patrolling for poachers, and they get shot at. They have to fly very low, very slow to do their job. They crash all the time, and it's very, very difficult, challenging, dangerous flying. And so she goes over there and gives them a week-long drill session on flying in this environment more safely. So we went over there this year with Patty, another air show pilot, Rich Sugden, and then John and Martha King, who are famous aviation instructors. They taught hundreds of thousands of people to fly through their DVDs that they sell, and put these guys to the ringer. And I was over there documenting it all, and it was just the most fascinating week. It was fantastic. These men are unbelievable. This is a nation with a per capita income of $1,600, so to become a pilot there, you really have to want to fly, and they do, and they just soaked up everything like a sponge. They couldn't have been nicer people, more interesting. One of them was a Maasai warrior, and who had to buck his the mores and culture of his nomadic clan to become a pilot. No Maasai had ever become a pilot. They herd cattle, and they lived nomadically. So the movie is a 30-minute account of all that, with interviews with them, and of course all the instructors that I just told you about. And it's I'm going to put available at the Lindbergh Foundation. I'm going to pop it on the web very shortly at www.lindberghfoundation.org. And I'd love for your listeners to take a look at while you're there. Watch the movie if you have time. Love for you to tell me what you think about it. You can reach me any number of ways, as you mentioned, and tell me what you think about it. But also stop and think. We'd love for you to help us support the cause of the Lindbergh Foundation. It's a good cause. I feel very strongly about it because, I'm an environmentalist, but I'm also a realist, and I do understand that tree hugging is a wonderful thing, but tree hugging is not going to save our planet. Our planet needs really clever technological, scientific approach to supporting 6 billion people plus, and it's growing. And until we get real about that, and kind of this notion in certain environmental circles that it's an anti-technological bent, that's got to end. We've got to embrace it. We've got to find clever solutions, and this foundation is all about supporting that.
Well, so we've got a couple more minutes left, and I think people who don't know are probably wondering. So I'm going to ask you, how and why did your long run at CNN come to an end? Was it, did you see the end coming? Were you surprised? Well,
in television, you see the end coming when you sign the contract, right? It's every 3 years, you're wondering if there'll be another contract, and it was clear to me as time went on. Those of your listeners who watch CNN and have been interested in the science and technology program would remember that we used to have sponsored pieces during the week and a sponsored program during the weekend, and all of that got chipped away, and we lost our airtime, frankly. And so we were in a position where we had to go to shows and pitch stories and hope that producers would buy them. And a lot of times, frankly, they didn't see the science stuff as fitting into their daily mix of politics and the latest missing child and what's Britney Spears up to. So the bottom line was it was harder and harder for us to get our content on the shows. Our niche wasn't in the grand scheme of things, wasn't something that CNN felt was valuable to build an audience. And they felt they could cover it just as well with Anderson Cooper and the Planet Apparel series. And so they decided for those reasons that it was no longer necessary to have a science and technology unit. So, yeah, I saw it coming. That was like a freight train coming down the path. And it's the business. It's a wacky business. And all I can say is, thank God that it all happened for me at a time where there's so many other ways for me to tell stories. And it hasn't stopped me a bit. As a matter of fact, the phone hasn't stopped ringing with people who say, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could do this? And wouldn't it be nice if you could, do a series of pieces on aviation? And on it goes. But there's so many ways to get that distributed these days that in a sense, mainstream media is becoming less and less. We'll put it this way: the mass audience is becoming less of a reality, and it's possible to reach people, to reach niche audiences effectively, and give them what they want. And that's what it's actually. I find it very exciting to be a part of it.
Well, Miles, I want to ask you too, if you felt that you've been after 17 years with CNN, did you feel that the culture and the philosophy of the place had changed in recent years with the rise of Fox News and even MSNBC seems to have finally found a place in the market?
Yeah. Oh, there's no question. And it's really you have to go back to the roots. When I came to CNN, of course, we were still. It was a mom and pop shop. Ted Turner, the first time I met Ted Turner, I was in the cafeteria one morning, getting my cup of coffee, and there's a guy in line in his bathrobe and slippers. And I looked at it. It was Ted. It was Ted. He lived in the penthouse above CNN, and he was literally, it was like an old country store with the owner living above it, and he treated it that way. And as a result, he really didn't run it. He made money, don't get me wrong, but he didn't run it like a business. He ran it with a lot of soul and a lot of heart and a lot of altruism. And if you had a big, wild idea project, you'd go up to Ted's office, and he'd walk past the receptionist. There'd be the stuffed MGM lion and some bear he shot years ago. It was unbelievable. And he'd just kind of look up and go, yeah, do it. And he wouldn't ask you about the money or any of the issues with the ratings. It was just something he wanted to do. And that, of course, reflected on what CNN did and what it was all about. We didn't spend money crazily, but we did some wild things that were not driven by focus groups or ratings, period. Of course, we didn't have competition then. And then, of course, things changed. And Fox came into the picture, MSNBC came into the picture. And what made it difficult, I think, for CNN to find its place is Fox came out very much with a point of view. There's no question where that network is coming from. We could quibble about the fair and balanced thing, but we don't have to get into that. We know what they're all about. And MSNBC has successfully figured, well, if they're going to be red, we'll be blue. In the meantime, CNN is in this kind of netherworld of its roots were the news is the star. That was Ted's mantra. The news is the star. And in order to maintain that identity and keep an audience between big events is difficult. If you go to CNN Center in Atlanta, there's a big chart up on the wall, and it shows the ratings over the years, the rating spikes. And the rating spikes match the news events, whether it's, the explosions of shuttles or the NAFTA debate with Ross Perot and Al Gore. Whatever it was, there were all these events that are associated with the rating spikes. But then after those events are over, and the election this past fall too, they did very well, the ratings go right back down. So people view CNN as a very reliable source for information when the chips are down, and that's good. You don't want to lose that ever, right? That's fantastic, as a matter of fact. But it's difficult to maintain that and then figure a way to program out those valleys. How do you keep them coming in between and still be true to your brand? And that's the CNN conundrum. And to this day, they haven't quite figured out how to triangulate between being that news utility, that reliable go-to place when it hits the fan, and programming in a way that is engaging when things aren't happening. And that's what Fox and MSNBC have figured out.
Well, I promise not to keep you all day here, but I do have to ask you one more thing. Now that you're doing all this space reporting and you're so involved, what's the chance of seeing you and the other Miles O'Brien, Colm Meaney, do something together?
It's funny. Everybody, there's a lot of people out there who are Trekkies who think it's just a joke that my name is Miles O'Brien, that I must have made that up or something. But truthfully, I think they took my name. But I've never met him. I'd love to meet him because, when you do a Google search for Miles O'Brien, you want to make sure that what people are saying about you. I get a lot of stuff about Cole Meany, so I know what he's up to, and I know where he is. And I'd love to meet him sometime. I think that'd be a nice photo opportunity, if nothing else.
Well, which over the last couple of years, which has been more frustrating or confusing for you? That people confuse you with the character on Star Trek, or that while you were at CNN the last few years, that people thought you were married to Soledad O'Brien?
Oh, well, I actually had a lot of fun with the latter because, Soledad used to get mad at me because people would say, well, are you two married? And I'd always say yes. And then I'd pause and say, not to each other. and she drove her crazy. I thought the whole marriage thing was, if nothing else, it was a novelty. It was a strange coincidence, certainly. And, I don't think it did anything except increase interest in the program. So what the heck? Let it rip. Let them think what they want to think.
Take what you can take, right?
Yeah.
Well, folks, you can follow Miles O'Brien's latest adventures in reporting through his personal blog, which is milesobrien.wordpress.com. milesobrien.wordpress.com. You can also become his friend, if he'll let you, on Facebook, or follow him on Twitter. I think Twitter is being updated a little more often than the blog, so that might be the best place to go. Miles, it was a lot of fun to talk to you. I really appreciate you coming on the show today and look forward to seeing what you're up to in the future.
All right. Well, stay in touch, and I'm going to get on that blog. I've been remiss on that. 140 characters suits my crazy schedule right at the moment. But anyway, Bob, it was a real pleasure. Thank you for taking to me. And if you ever want to talk more about new media and what's going on in space, I'm here for you.
Excellent. Good to talk to you, Miles, and good luck.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And folks, for more journalist interviews, you can surf over to our main website, www.mrmedia.com. That's where you can listen to my earlier conversations with Chris Hansen of NBC News, Sam Champion of ABC's Good Morning America, Pulitzer Prize winner Bill Adair of PolitiFact.com, Alberto Ibarguen of the Knight Foundation, Karen Dunlap of the Poynter Institute, Pulitzer Prize-winning editorial cartoonist Clay Bennett, and many more. And, of course, you can read my interview with Soledad O'Brien from many years ago when she was at MSNBC. And please think about writing an online review of Mr. Media, casting a vote for Mr. Media, or marking Mr. Media as one of your favorites, whether you listen on Blog Talk Radio, Pointer Online, Digital Journal, Podcast Pickle, Vox, Folio, Mediafly, Podfeed.net, Blueberry, Zencast, or Odeo. And subscribe to Mr. Media on iTunes, and you'll never miss a show. Just search Mr. Media Interviews from within iTunes and subscribe for free. You can also listen with a piece of string and a tin can in many locations. If you've got an idea for a guest, email me directly at bob@andelman.com. That's ANDELMAN. You can also follow me on Facebook or on Twitter, www.twitter.com/Andelman. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing a piece of your day with Mr. Media. Come back again real soon, and thanks.